Khora has recently received her Prime variant, and it's a beautiful one. Of course, looks aren't everything. How can we build her, Venari, and a Statstick to get the most out of Khora? I'm the Engineer, let's solve a practical problem. We'll start with an overview of Khora's abilities, and then look at the builds for Venari, Khora, and a couple Statsticks. Also remember to make sure you're subscribed to catch more videos as soon as they go live. Khora's passive grants her a second companion, Venari. While she also has an ability called Venari, subsuming over that doesn't remove her having a Kavat companion in missions. Instead, removing the ability just removes the option to command or quick revive Venari. While Venari is active, it acts like any other Kavat companion, including providing passive benefits. If Venari is reduced to 0 health, it immediately despawns instead of going into bleed out, but it will reappear after either 45 seconds or upon casting the Venari ability again. Venari can be commanded through the Venari ability to act in specific ways. When set to attack, Venari will attack nearby enemies, and use an ability called Ensnare to briefly bind an enemy whilst damaging it. Venari's damage output doesn't scale particularly well, and shouldn't be much of a focus. When set to protect, Venari will focus on the nearest enemy to Khora and use an ability called Tail Whip. This ability can knock down and disarm the target enemy, providing a small defensive support. Finally, when set to heal, Venari will seek out allies with less than full health and attempt to heal them using Revitalize, providing a base 50 health per second to allies within 10 meters. This can be a key source of healing for Khora to fix the small amounts of damage that accumulates during an ongoing mission. Looking to the other abilities, Khora's second ability Ensnare and fourth ability Strangledome are both crowd control abilities that are essential to Khora's survival. Ensnare will incapacitate a targeted enemy. After a moment's delay, chains lash out from the target to nearby enemies, incapacitating them as well and drawing them into the first target. This propagates a second time to drag in yet more enemies, potentially locking down an entire room. Every enemy incapacitated by Ensnare takes double damage from both Whipclaw and Venari for the duration. Strangledome, on the other hand, will form a dome of chains on the ground around Khora, dropping her to the ground to cast it if she's not already there. This dome will lash out at nearby enemies, incapacitating and dangling them from various parts of the dome. While attached to the dome, enemies take double damage from all sources except for Whipclaw, and will taunt other enemies into shooting them instead of you. While Whipclaw doesn't get any bonus damage from hitting enemies in the dome, hitting any enemy held with Whipclaw will also strike every other enemy held by the dome for half damage. In this way, the Strangledome can make Whipclaw deal over 13 times as much damage as normal, distributed through the held enemies, acting as a sort of nuke. This brings us on to Whipclaw itself then. Khora casts out a long whip, creating an explosion at the end of its reach, or on the surface it strikes beforehand. At base, the ability only does 300 damage, with a 25% critical chance, 20% status chance, and a 2 times critical multiplier. The damage also increases by 25% for each tier of melee combo you have, up to 275% extra damage at 12 times combo. But much further than this, Whipclaw is one of very few abilities which benefits from what's known as a Statstick. Many mods equipped to your melee weapon affect Whipclaw as if you were modding the ability itself. Not everything applies, but pure damage mods, aura mods, physical and elemental mods, critical mods, status chance mods, and combo mods all apply, in addition to blood rush, weeping wounds, and appropriate ribbon stats. On the other hand, faction mods, attack speed mods, range mods, condition overload, base weapon stats, and special features like lifesteal mods or syndicate effects all do not affect Whipclaw. In effect then, you can grab just about any melee weapon and mod it specifically for Whipclaw in order to boost the damage. While the base ability will deal 375 damage on average per hit, or around 1400 at max combo, the maximised Statstick in Khora Build I'll show you in a moment will raise this to over 750,000 damage per hit before damage type bonuses. Considering that Whipclaw is an explosive ability, able to hit multiple targets, and even more through Strangledome, that's a lot of damage. You can't grab absolutely any melee though. For balance reasons, any weapon with infinite or pausable combo duration will have its entire combo lost when you cast Whipclaw, making them terrible for use as a Statstick. Because of this, do not use the Zoris, Tenet Livia, or Tenet Grigori. With the basics of Khora in mind, we can consider then how to build her. Venari is pretty simple to mod. Unlike normal companions, most of Venari's special abilities are tied to Khora's Venari ability, meaning we can instead focus on keeping Venari alive and some token support options. Enhanced Vitality and Metal Fiber provide substantial health and armor boosts, more than you can get from the link mods if your Khora isn't running Vitality or Steel Fiber. Synth Fiber on this build will also double Venari's armor whilst active, bringing it up to 1,888 armor for an 86% damage reduction. The Pack Leader mod provides healing to Venari. It's downranked intentionally to save capacity. While the lifesteal is only 6% unranked, if we divide Venari's 1,820 health by 6%, we get around 30,000. This means if you land a melee hit of 30,000, you'll fully heal Venari. Now, given that Whipclaw will be doing substantially more than that with every cast, 6% lifesteal is fine. The mods Fetch and Primed Animal Instinct fill in passive support roles, which come in especially handy if your normal companion bites the dust. Maul, Swipe and Sharpen Claws all provide bonuses to Venari's damage, and periodically armor stripping certain enemies. The damage is still going to be low, but these mods help to support Hunt's recovery, so that Venari will continue to heal Khora even when not nearby or not in heal mode. I wouldn't suggest putting any more focus into building Venari for damage, such as using Bite, because ultimately it's an investment black hole that'll eat your former and not really give you anything back. Now, as for Khora herself, her Whipclaw, Ensnare and Strangledome all benefit greatly from increased range, and both Ensnare and Strangledome need duration to work. You would think that Whipclaw would also need strength, however thanks to the augment Accumulated Whipclaw, providing up to 350% strength to Whipclaw, we can skip strength in a Whipclaw build entirely. This main build is designed around using Whipclaw for your primary damage, combined with Strangledoming or ensnaring enemies to keep you alive. Brief Respite helps to restore shields for shield gating purposes, Rolling Guard is there to let you survive those otherwise lethal status procs that slip through, and Prime Sure-Footed is to avoid knockdowns which could otherwise see Khora die on the steel path. With so little health and armor, the last thing you need to do is to be briefly incapacitated, which is why Prime Sure-Footed is so useful here. As for the rest of the build, that's focused on having the casting stats and energy needed to continuously use Whipclaw to devastating effect. To make use of this build, you must keep moving and must keep using your crowd control abilities to prevent enemies from being a threat. Now, this is a high investment build requiring Prime Sure-Footed and Arcane Energize. You can drop Prime Sure-Footed, but it will put you at risk from many sources of knockdown. That said, from an investment perspective, if you do drop Prime Sure-Footed, you won't need any former at all in Khora Prime to fit this build. As for Arcane Energize, you would need to replace it with another source of energy if you're skipping that Arcane. You can, for example, use Zeneric's Wellspring ability to gain energy over time. This comes at the cost of not using Naramon for reduced combo decay. Alternatively, you can replace the Venari ability with an energy generating ability, like Dispensary or Spectre Rage with its augment. This will lose you the ability to command and re-summon Venari. If you go the Spectre Rage route, I'd recommend replacing Stretch with the augment. Now do bear in mind that by removing the Venari ability, this also removes the ability to get Venari to heal you. Dispensary will still put out health orbs to keep your health up from those little bits of damage that we'll get through in any mission, but Spectre Rage will require you to pick up a different source of healing, such as the Arcane Molt Reconstruct. Ultimately, you could rely on energy and health pizzas to help keep you going, but it doesn't do well to rely on using restores when an appropriate build removes the need for them entirely. Now, if you're looking to use Khora for looting purposes, it takes very little tweaking to achieve. If you're happy to kill enemies with something other than Whipclaw, just swapping out Accumulating Whipclaw for Pilfering Strangledome will give all held enemies a 65% chance of double drops. You keep the range and efficient casting, and the lack of strength doesn't hurt Pilfering Strangledome at all. As a further alternative, I know some of you just want to be a bit lazy on a low level mission and just hold a choke point for loot. In that case, replace Overextended with a mid-ranked Narrow-Minded. This will give neutral range and strength, a substantial boost to duration. It'll make the dome last longer whilst occupying a smaller zone like covering a doorway. When using a dome only approach like this, your energy use will be very low overall, giving you the freedom to do away with Arcane Energize for a cheaper alternative Arcane. Perhaps consider Arcane Nullifier in case the lazy farm makes you a little bit too slow to react to an Energy Leech Eximus. For a third approach, you can combine these two styles together, using Whipclaw for killing the domed enemies alongside Pilfering Strangledome. To do this, we can convert from the first build by simply swapping out Stretch for Pilfering Strangledome, maintaining most of the range. By keeping most of the range, you still keep a large dome and a large AoE on Whipclaw, and of course Whipclaw can hit just one enemy on the dome to then deal damage to the rest of the captured enemies. If you'd still prefer to go for a smaller dome, we can instead take off Overextended and swap out Augur Message for bringing back in Stretch. This will give you a smaller dome, but you'll still have the powerful Whipclaw to go with it. Just be aware that Whipclaw's explosion radius and range will be a lot smaller with this approach. Finally then, with Khora set up the way you want her, you'll need to appropriately mod your Statstick. That is a melee weapon created to support Whipclaw rather than just be a melee weapon. There are two main ways to go about a Khora Statstick. Either you can build around initial combo, giving you some smaller benefits from combo without having to focus on getting or maintaining any combo in the first place. The other option will be to go for a full combo build, which requires you to actively focus on building and maintaining combo through either constant Whipclaws or using the melee itself. This then is the initial combo build. This build requires a weapon which has a bonus to initial combo in order to be fully effective, such as the Praedos, Synod Hido Core, Furex Wraith or Fragile Prime. A suitable Riven with initial combo would also work. For this build, I've chosen to go for corrosive damage, using Prime Fever Strike, Shocking Touch and Virulent Scourge, as corrosive has the widest benefits for direct damage on this scale. Steel Path Acolytes are weak to it, half of all Grineer are weak to it, most Sentients are weak to it, and even Heavier Infested are weak to corrosive. This means the damage type bonus is focused on taking out most of the bigger threats to Khora outright. Even against the Corpus, the sheer damage works just fine, leaving corrosive available for dealing with Acolytes rather than switching to a different type like Toxin. This build works best combined with Arcane Fury for pure damage bonuses, giving a nearly always on 180% pure damage bonus. If you don't have or don't want to use Arcane Fury, swap out instead Virulent Scourge for Spoiled Strike to rebalance the pure damage versus elemental damage. A big benefit of going for an initial combo build is that you do not need to build and keep your combo. While a higher combo will give you more damage, both through the Gladiator set bonus and the bonus damage from just having combo, you can still deliver a lot of damage even if your combo timer runs out. This frees up your operator focus score from Naramon to anything else you like, and also allows you to use arcanes other than dexterity on your primary and secondary weapon. Now if you're not fussed about limitations on your focus score and arcanes, especially if you intend to use Whipclaw as your main damage source in an endless mission, you can instead use this full combo build. By losing the initial combo and flat critical chance bonuses, this build starts off noticeably weaker. However, as you gain combo, powering a Blood Rush in particular, the damage ramps up significantly. Once again, if you're not using Arcane Fury, swap out Virulent Scourge for Spoiled Strike. This build can go onto any melee weapon whatsoever, with the best melee weapon being the one you have a good Riven for. In this case, a good Riven is one that can replace any of the basic mods, like critical damage, critical chance, or electric damage, and then other stats pile on even more benefits. Acceptable negatives for this Riven will be things like faction stats, status chance or duration, attack speed, or range. You should support this combo build by using the Naramon focus score for power spike, and by equipping dexterity arcanes to your guns. If you skip these, you risk letting your combo decay should there be a lull in the fighting, or if too many kills get stolen from under you by an ally. Now rather conspicuously, both of these builds have basically skipped status chance, especially the combo build. The simple reason for this is that adding Weeping Wounds would only increase the status chance from 32% to 120% on the combo build. This would take us from dealing the occasional corrosive proc per enemy to routinely delivering corrosive with the occasional physical proc per enemy. In practical terms, that doesn't really help you. The whole point of a status focused weapon would be either to deliver lots of status to cripple the enemy, or to consistently deliver a few devastating status effects like slash to bypass armor. Even if we were to use viral damage, it has no bonuses against armor, and the idea with this combo build is to one-shot most enemies outright, rather than relying on proccing viral first. So instead of wasting a slot on slightly more status effects that aren't really doing a whole lot, we can instead focus on maximizing damage so that most enemies don't live long enough to even care about status procs. As a final variation, for those of you who aren't able to use Naramon Focus Score or Dexterity Arcanes, but you still want to use the combo build, What you can do then is swap out Virulent Scourge for instead either Gladiator Rush or Drifting Contact. Gladiator Rush will give you 6 seconds more combo time and some more critical chance, while Drifting Contact will give you 10 seconds more combo time and some token status chance. All told then, you've got a Venari build, a Khora build with a couple variations, and 2 major Statstick builds with variations to match your goals and level of progress within Warframe. Take them for a spin, see how they feel for you. That's all from me for now though, so as always, snare enemies, crack whips, and fight well, Tenno.